The clock that missed midnight when Sonia bought the old clock at the market in Poulton. The seller warned her, "It will never strike 12. Sonia laughed it off. At worst, it was a unique antique for her wall. But that night, she noticed something strange. At 11:59, the clock's hands froze. Time stopped. The television turned off, the refrigerator fell silent. And even her heart began to beat slower, but her mind remained clear. Outside, everything was frozen. Birds mid-flight, leaves suspended in the air, even raindrops frozen mid-fall. Then, she saw a faint figure standing under the street lamp. A tall man in black, motionless, except for his eyes, which faintly glowed blue. He raised his hand and silently mouthed, "Run!" And as soon as the clock struck 12 o'clock again, the world began moving once more. The next morning, Mira shattered the clock. But since then, every night she wakes up at 11:59, and again she hears it ticking somewhere in the house. Thank you all. I lost my cat in a fire, but her memory saved me in the darkest days. I never imagined that a tiny cat could take up so much space in my heart until I lost her. She wasn't just a pet, she was my little shadow. Every morning before work, she would see me off at the door, meowing as if cheering me on. And when I returned home exhausted, she would be there rubbing against my legs, as if saying, "You did it, human." Then came the night that changed everything. While I was away, a fire broke out in the kitchen. By the time I got back, it was already too late. I still remember standing outside, numb, watching the smoke rise, knowing she was inside. It felt like the entire world around me had fallen silent. Days turned into weeks, and the house felt unbearably empty. No little paws on the floor, no soft meowing in the mornings. I told myself it was just a pet, but it wasn't like that. She was my comfort after long days, my laughter when my heart felt heavy. But here's the strange part. Even though she's gone, I still feel her near. When life gets tough, I catch myself whispering her name. Sometimes, I find one of her old toys hidden behind the furniture, as if she's reminding me, "Keep going." Her loss broke me. Her memories healed me. She taught me that love doesn't disappear, it just changes form. Jane outshines everyone and makes Austin a little weird, but fun, the story of my life. During Jane's visit to Austin, for some reason, we decided to go to an open mic night at a local comedy, improv theatre. I think we ended up in Cold Town, though I can't quite remember. But she rushed off to grab Triumph, we jumped into the car, and off we went. I remember we had to park around the corner, in front of some houses. I think it was Johnson Street or something like that. "You know, maybe I should drop you off, it'll be easier that way," I said. "No way. You know I can wiggle for miles. Let's just find a spot and park," she replied. So, I parked Triumph and helped Jane out of the passenger seat. We started our leisurely stroll to the theatre, which was about a block away from the hotel. As we walked, other people heading to the theatre passed by us or saw us, pointed fingers, and doubled back. Everything would have been fine if Jane hadn't been with me. Finally, we reached the end of the line, and there was quite a crowd at the entrance. Some conversations paused when we stood in line, but eventually, people went back to their business. But a few decided that their new task was to stare at Jane and take mental notes of every little detail. Time passed, and eventually, I got our tickets and asked Jane if she needed anything. "No, I'm fine," she said. Still, I went ahead and grabbed a soda. When I returned, we found seats in the back of the small theatre, close to the stage. A few people went on stage, and they were all great. Then, I heard Jane's name called. Jane W., and I looked at her, stunned. "While you were off getting drinks, I signed us up. Wish me luck." With that, she stood up and started her signature hip-swaying dance. They called her name again. "Jane W., are you here?" I'm coming. I thought if I left yesterday, I'd make it on time, but this dress just wouldn't cooperate. With how tight it is and all the junk I'm hauling from my suitcase, it feels like it took an eternity to get here." The crowd laughed as she made her way to the stage. The stage had 2 steps, and because the dress was so tight, Jane couldn't lift her leg to step onto the first step. She hopped up on each one, and the audience enjoyed watching her sway and bounce. Bet you didn't expect to see Jelly on Springs at a comedy show, did you? She just made up this story and used the dress as a prop, and the audience loved it. I wore this dress when I flew here from Phoenix, and the agent asked me if I had anything hidden under it. I looked at her and said, "Honey, in this dress, there's barely enough room for me. I mean, seriously." Then she said, "If you're wondering what the W stands for in my name, it's either Widias or Wiggle. I don't care." She just rolled with it. I'm almost convinced that Lycra, which stretches in for directions, is a modern miracle. I mean, look at me. And I bet you're wondering how I get my big butt into this dress. So am I. Then, she held an impromptu Q and a session that was just hilarious. I'm pretty sure I'm living proof that four-way stretch fabric is the eighth wonder of the world. I mean, look at this butt, and it fits. One woman asked, "Why do you wear something so tight?" "Honestly, it makes your butt look huge." Jane replied, "Well, when I walk, or sit, or hell, even breathe, imagine a full-body massage, and you'll feel pretty comfortable. Some people need a soft blanket, and I use my dresses. And sweetie, my butt's not big. Let's be honest, it's huge." Then she said it was part of her workout routine. As you may have noticed, the stairs are interval and strength training. I have to jump from step to step. Sometimes I need to hop faster, like if I'm trying to catch a bus or a train. With that, she started bouncing across the stage, to the delight and surprise of the audience. Another woman, clearly stunned, "Did you say dresses? They must be for special occasions, right? Like for tonight." Jane was amused. "Every day is a special occasion. That's why I dress accordingly. Yes, it means I wear one of my dresses almost every day, and that turns every day into an adventure. Sometimes getting somewhere is a very slow adventure, but it's fun. I have over 40 of them." The audience gasped. She performed a 25-minute set non-stop, right on the spot. The crowd loved her. "If you need to kill a few hours, you can wait for me outside because, as you can see, I move slowly. I'll gladly pose for a picture when I get to my spot. Maybe you'll want to grab dinner before that. Not that I'm in any rush." The book I could never find in my chemistry class. There's a girl I've quietly admired for several weeks now. She always sat at the other end of the room, far enough so that our gazes only met after crossing a small space between desks, bathed in natural light. But somehow, it always happened. From time to time, I'd catch her eye across the hallway or see her walking by. And for a brief moment, it felt like the universe was setting the stage for something I wasn't yet brave enough to act on. But today was different. The thought of doing nothing, simply letting the silence last forever, finally felt heavier than the fear itself. So, I did what I always do when I can't trust my own instincts. I prayed and asked for the courage to just be myself. That's when I came up with my plan, a mix of sincerity, nervousness, and cinematic logic. I accidentally bumped into her at the library and asked for her help finding a book called Let's Fall in Love. I even remembered the ISBN, PS3358L48. I wanted it to be clever, subtle, something that would make her smile without needing any explanation. And for a moment, it worked. I turned the corner on the third floor, and there she was. She looked at me with a surprised but open gaze, as if we'd both fallen into the same trap. I asked her for help, and she eagerly jumped in. I asked her name and what she was studying. I could feel my heart stop with every word. I was so excited and nervous. But then the moment slipped away. ID remembered the ISBN wrong. One digit was off, minus 3,358 instead of 3,558. When she entered it, nothing came up in the catalogue. "No results," she said, giving me a polite smile that was meant to ease the awkwardness. Inside, everything shattered. I cracked a joke, saying I'd probably just find it myself. I thanked her, said goodbye, and even mentioned that we were both in the chemistry department, as if that might extend the moment just a little longer. But it didn't happen. By the time I found the book and gathered the courage to come back, she was gone, just disappeared. I stood there for a while, holding a book I never intended to read, thinking maybe the universe was trying to show me that time, in some way, is a kind of chemistry, made of equal parts reaction, chance, and failure. So yes, maybe my plan failed. But for a few minutes, I talked to the girl at the other end of the room. And maybe that's enough for today. I never knew foxes could scream in my final year of university. My friends and I decided to take a trip to celebrate our friendship, just in case we never saw each other again. There were 6 of us. Among us was the wealthy guy known as B, whose parents owned a lot of land in the countryside. They invited us to one of their many estates. For a city guy like me, going to a place where there were no people, no phone signal, and no electricity within a 20-kilometer radius was a real challenge. My friends convinced, or at least dared each other to go, and none of us wanted to be the one to back out. The estate was right at the edge of the forest, with an open plain on the opposite side. During the day, it was quite pleasant, with beautiful views and a cozy log cabin. I sarcastically asked how B's parents managed to acquire such an estate, given the current economic situation after the pandemic. I thought my friend was joking, but he was serious. The land belonged to a farming family, and his parents had bought it dirt cheap by falsifying documents. Thankfully, the farmers were long gone, and I didn't want to be a target, though, poor farmers. So I knew nothing before entering the estate. The downside was that they had died a long time ago, and their graves were scattered across various estates. In the afternoon, we split into 2 groups. 3 people were tasked with gathering firewood and kindling for the campfire, and the other 3 went to find food. I was assigned to find logs. Since it was summer, none of us were particularly excited about spending the afternoon in the sun, so we waited until dusk, as the forest was just nearby. As night fell, we set off into the woods with flashlights. Everything was still fine. For a city guy, the forest didn't seem too bad. Our group gathered logs, some flowers, and even herbs for herbal tea. At 7:30, we started heading back, and the sun was already beginning to set. When we returned to the cabin, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling I had from the graves. I wasn't afraid of dead people after all. I was studying pharmacy, but for some reason, I felt uneasy. The evening went on as usual. We drank, shared secrets, talked about where everyone had gotten jobs, the usual stuff. We didn't pay attention to the fact that the firewood had run out. Naturally, we started looking for someone to blame. Our group, responsible for gathering firewood, had procrastinated until the very end, and we hastily returned with only a small supply. My group volunteered to go back to the forest's edge. No city prepared me for what I felt when I stepped onto the edge of the woods. It was pitch dark. Our flashlights couldn't pierce the thick darkness. We, being young and full of bravado, egged each other on to go further, and anyone who refused was considered a coward. A scream echoed through the woods. That was enough to send us scattering in all directions like children. I instinctively turned around, saw glowing eyes staring directly at me, and turned to run as fast as I could. The fire went out, and we had to use our flashlights. There were 6 of us, and we took turns keeping watch in pairs to guard the camp. We couldn't sleep after what had happened in the woods. When it was my turn to keep watch with my best friend, one of us fell asleep. But I couldn't. I was shaking too much. I heard some noise. Maybe it was a squirrel, a raccoon, or a lynx. I ran through all the possibilities in my mind, even a wendigo. Though I tell myself such creatures don't exist, at least there's no scientific evidence. I was going through all the possible scenarios when I suddenly heard a blood-curdling scream, as if someone was being gutted. We all woke up and started banging on the doors and windows with whatever we could find: chairs, tables, boards, etc. Some of us were paralyzed by fear and stress. Like idiots, we spun the wheel of fortune in Google to figure out who would get lucky enough to investigate the source of the noise. B and I were the ones who got lucky. We slowly approached the barred window, and through the small gaps in our protection, we saw, well, foxes. We corrected ourselves. Foxes can't make those kinds of sounds. It was so unnatural that maybe someone outside was the source of the noise. While we argued and worked ourselves up, the foxes screamed again. For the first time in my 20 years, I heard a fox scream like a woman. We sighed in immense relief. It wasn't the graves, I told myself, because that would have been illogical. The next day, we cut our trip short and returned home. No one in the group ever mentioned it again. My best friend didn't even believe me when I said the foxes screamed outside, and accused me of cowardice, which that night could have led to a terrible fate for the unfortunate one. Maybe that's how it was, and the first scream didn't come from the foxes. But I really hope that's what it was. A story of 4 years of love 4 years ago, when I first transferred to a new school. I quickly became part of a group of popular guys who hung out with girls. At first, these girls seemed completely ordinary to me, nothing special, and I barely interacted with them. About 6 months later, I noticed one girl, let's call her D. She was beautiful, smart, well-groomed, and neat. Everything I wanted in a girl. But at that moment, it didn't matter to me, since I was still getting used to my new class. Then, one day, she literally followed me around all day. I found out it was a challenge. We used to play truth or dare quite often. It bothered me because by then, I really started to like her, but I tried to forget about it. A year passed. Suddenly, I realized I was crazy about her. Her wine-swept hair, her entire appearance. To me, she was Aphrodite. But at that time, D was dating my friend, so I tried to push her out of my mind. 3 months later, I managed to forget about my feelings, and then summer break started. So everything seemed fine. In the 9th grade a year ago, another classmate developed feelings for me. She confessed, and thinking that D would never notice me, I started secretly dating her. And then, unexpectedly, D began flirting with me, hinting at something. The girl I was dating didn't even interest me. I was just a shy guy who was afraid to say no. So, I hinted to D that I had a girlfriend. I continued dating the classmate for 2 more weeks, but then I realized it was unfair to her, since all my thoughts were only about D. One suggested we break up. After that, I never spoke openly to D, fearing she would think I acted foolishly by starting to pursue her right after a breakup. It would also seem odd to those who knew about my previous relationship. At the end of last year, during the summer and early autumn, D and I started talking more casually. I was about to confess my feelings to her after all. It had been 3 years since I first fell for her. She didn't seem to hide her interest either. She sat next to me in class, gave me compliments. Although we couldn't be called friends, there were other hints clearly aimed at me. Just recently, I was finally going to confess my feelings to her, but she beat me to it by a day and directly asked if I had feelings for her. I honestly replied, yes. She then told me that she liked another guy. The next day, I posted a